This is the Analysing Anfield podcast on the Blood Red channel, bringing you the best tactical and statistical analysis of Liverpool FC.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your tactics and analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. I'm Josh Williams and I'm joined as always by David Hughes. Dave, how's things?
Yeah, very good, thank you, mate. Very good indeed.
How does it feel to have your country in a European Championship final, mate?
Yeah. I'll throw it back to you, but very, very bizarre. Felt like quite a big occasion last night. Obviously, we're recording the next day, but something that's never been experienced, and probably for most people listening, they haven't seen England in a major final. So, yeah, big occasion.
Yeah, definitely a strange one. I wasn't really sure how to react, because it's so fresh, it's so new. And with that being the case, you know, we appreciate that this is Analysing Anfield and stuff, but the club side, we have been saying every week, the club side is really, really quiet at the minute, and everybody in the day is talking about the Euros. We appreciate that we have listeners in the likes of Australia and Ireland and places like this, but everyone's talking about the Euros, so we can't not, especially given that England are now in the final of the competition. So we're going to run over Denmark a little bit. We're going to preview the final against Italy, and we're going to speak a little bit around just tournament bits in general, really. But in terms of the Denmark game, Dave, I thought it was another pretty strong England performance, personally.
Yeah, it was right up there in terms of the performances I've seen from England. I mean, they've produced good performances really across the knockout phase. There was good stuff in the group stage, obviously, but certainly since we've hit the knockout phase, I think England have been, well, pretty impressive. And Denmark was a tricky game. I thought, you know, the kind of dark horses before the competition started. Obviously, they had the kind of tragic thing with Eriksen, which can sometimes feed into narratives and, you know, provide extra motivation. And yeah, beyond all that, from football terms alone, a good technical side with some good plays that we spoke about pre-tournament, you know, plays to watch. So, you know, all that together makes for a difficult opponent. But if you look at we can talk about the penalty if we need to, but you know, either side of that, in terms of how the game panned out, I thought England were more than deserved winners.
No, I agree. I think, you know, going into the match, for me, Denmark were very much dark horses. The way they were playing, they weren't getting through as a result of fortune or luck or anything like that. Their performances were really good. I described them recently as looking a bit like a club side, to be honest. But if you look at how England dealt with them, it was just really, really impressive. I know that Denmark took the lead and stuff, and it was a bit tight, and England eventually needed a penalty to get through and things. But if you look at the numbers behind Denmark's tournament, for example, they've been one of the best sides, really, specifically in attack. You know, in the first game of the season, first game of the tournament, they faced Finland, 21 shots. Then they faced Belgium, 21 shots. Faced Russia, 16 shots. Wales, 16 shots. Czech Republic, 11 shots. And then when it comes to England, despite the fact that the match lasted 120 minutes, England restricted them to just 6. So again, it comes back to the approach, I suppose, that Southgate's kind of instilled. You know, it is quite conservative. It is focused on, rather than getting the best out of your strengths, it is kind of making sure your weaknesses are masked. And Denmark, again, similar to Germany and similar to some other teams that England have faced in the tournament, just found it difficult really to get going and to generate much, if anything, of value on the attacking side of the game.
Yeah, they seem to be very much forced to defend a lot more than I think they would like to. Thought they had a little spell when they scored where they played some good football and they were managing to get a little bit of dominance in England's territory, but that was fleeting. And on the whole, you know, a lot of play was played within their half. They were forced to defend a lot. And I thought England managed their brief or very few counters really well. You know, they seem to struggle to get out quickly in numbers without being nullified by the way England was set up. And what it created was this kind of almost wave after wave of attacks. And I think it got to that stage where it mentally broke Denmark down from a psychological point of view. And it's something that, going back to this show and Liverpool, something that we've seen so many times with Liverpool, when they come up against opponents, they force them to defend, keep them in their own half and create this dominance on the pitch where it's hard for them to get out. The counter-attacks are few and far between, and when they do come, they're normally well managed. Thought England's defenders and midfielders defended them really well. And it mentally breaks teams down. And you could see Denmark, they were playing for extra time within the 90, and then in the extra time before the goal, they were hoping to just make it to penalties.
Well, I think, one thing on that is, I think one thing that's really been underestimated throughout the tournament when it comes to England, certainly, is the squad Southgate has. He's just got the right player, the right tool for every match scenario, basically. Whereas if you look at Denmark, I think specifically when it gets to these stages of the tournament, they didn't really have the depth, I thought. And when they started making a few changes, bringing fresh legs onto the field, they were unable to retain the same threat and stuff. Like, I saw this morning, they actually had 0 shots after the 60th minute. So, that's half the game. They spent 50% of the game without having a single shot. And that was around the time that Damsgaard left the field, Dolberg left the field. And I think, they brought on Yusuf Poulsen, who's a decent player, and, Christian Norgard and stuff like that, come on. But when England on the opposite side are needing a goal, and he can bring on Jack Grealish, and he can bring on Phil Foden, it is ridiculous when you look at it, and England have got those tools at their disposal, and I thought Southgate has used those tools really, really well. Like, obviously, Grealish's substitution after being already used as a sub received a bit of criticism and stuff. But if you just look at the way he's been used tactically, Grealish, he's kind of only been used throughout the tournament when England need a goal. So he's kind of been Southgate's key to the door, essentially. And then as soon as England get the goal last night, specifically, he brings on Trippier, goes to a back five to soak the pressure, and Grealish comes off because Grealish's job is essentially done. I think in the first game of the tournament against Croatia, his substitutes with the likes of Marcus Rashford, because we had a goal on Croatia, we were a goal up, and we could then start basically counter-attacking. So it comes back to that kind of tournament football type thing and managing almost purely on the game state. Whatever the game state is, you manage accordingly. And I think some teams, I think probably Liverpool tick this box, always behave the same, almost. Whereas some managers, Benitez comes to mind, I mentioned last week, Ancelotti's another one. Southgate seems to be, at least when it comes to England, just adjusting constantly based on whatever the match scenario is.
Yeah, and game management was key yesterday. I mean, if you wanted to try and get a visualization almost, that captured in a nutshell, I think it was, there'll be a few around at this point, but the first I saw last night was Opta releasing like the timing chart of the XG accumulated, and it's something that we reference. We'll use likes of Understat, won't we? And when we're looking at Liverpool games, and if anyone has a chance to go and look at that, I think Duncan Alexander at Oily Sailor, terrible app by the way, but yeah, you'd be able to see it there if you're on Twitter. It's you'll get a picture of it. Beyond that, the goal, which in itself, I thought Denmark were really impressive when it did from a set piece point of view. I referenced it last night. Saw you reference something earlier as well. But beyond that free kick, which is a shot from distance, it's the kind of thing that it's got risk, but you'd like to think you can cope with them. Beyond that, they just didn't really create anything of note. And if you look at England, it's really healthy in terms of what they do, and it's captured within the timing chart. I think Opta ended up finishing 2.82 XG for England to Denmark's 0.25. You might see variations of that elsewhere, but if you were just looking at that in isolation, you say that was a well deserved dominant win. Could have been maybe 3-0 on a different day.
Yeah, and that's why I don't really think it's necessary really to talk about the penalty, because in situations like that, I am inclined to look at the full, 120-minute spell, and essentially, who deserves to win. And in my opinion, it was England. Although Denmark performed really, really well throughout the tournament, and I do think they had spells early on where they were causing a few problems. I think England were just a better side. England just grinded them down. And I will say as well, when England conceded first, that was a test that, England have conceded first in the past in big, big moments, specifically Iceland. And it was an opportunity there for basically the country to lose its bottle. And I thought that, home fans should generally benefit England, but I thought in that situation with England conceding first, I thought that could potentially go against the team. But the way England just kind of kept playing, no long shots, no madness, just still an hour left in the game and they got a goal back fairly soon. I thought that was quite just different to what we might have seen from England sides in the past. You mentioned set pieces there, Dave. I think, it was one of them games really, wasn't it? Both teams showing a clear interest in it. The moment that I flagged on Twitter this morning was, I think it was Denmark's first free kick. It was kind of on the edge of the final third, a little bit close to the flank. And the way Denmark set up, it was just kind of like a big ball of players. I think Lee Dixon on commentary said you could throw a coat over them. They were that close together. And then once the ball gets approached by the taker, everyone's in different directions. I think 2 players attacked the near post, 2 players attacked the back post, and maybe one ran through the centre. And as a result of that confusion, Luke Shaw commits a foul. And then obviously Damsgaard scores from the resulting free kick. And I initially thought Pickford was a fault. We praised Pickford last week. But your tweet, Dave, actually, when you tweeted what Denmark did, that was the first I saw on my timeline. So, that was the first time I saw that Denmark had included like a subtle little ploy there to gain an edge.
Yeah, it was really clever. If anyone hasn't seen it, they basically almost alongside the England wall, they have a 3-man Denmark wall as well. But as the free kick's due to be taken by Damsgaard, they take about maybe, I don't know, a 2-yard step to the right, which blocks Pickford's vision, and then I think they reopen the gap again. I can't remember the specifics off the top of my head, but if you watched it back now, you'd see it really clearly. And what it does is it just blocks his vision up until the point of the ball being hit. And I agree. I can see what you're saying. I thought the same. When you see where the ball lands, and that's what a lot of the pundits were focusing on at half time. If you just look at that, you think, well, it's landed here. The goalkeeper should be able to reach that. But if you think about the fact that then they blocked that his sight and then the speed of which the ball was hit, because it was hit with some real power and speed, it just makes it pretty. It would have been a remarkable save had he made it, and for that reason, I don't think you can then criticise if they don't make the save. But yeah, I thought the free kick that you were talking about, Josh, was really good in the build-up, and even the corner. I don't know. Do you recall that corner early on where it was basically every man, including the defenders, inside the 6-yard box around the goalkeeper, which maybe isn't brand new, something that it's probably something we have seen before, but it just creates a lot of mayhem in there. Makes it really difficult for Pickford to get, a clean punch if he's trying to come out. It makes it difficult to defend. And when you start seeing teams doing stuff like this, you know that they're well drilled on a variety of set pieces. And in games like this, that can obviously be decisive. So beyond the free kick, I think England dealt with it really well. And on another day, they could be punished by it.
Yeah, it was. They were doing the type of things that you could have easily conceded from. Like, you mentioned the 6 yard thing there. I think they did that with the first corner of the game that they had, and I think they did it with another one in extra time as well. And as you say, it just causes a bit of mayhem, and it tends to work a bit more effectively when you do it on a keeper who maybe isn't the biggest. I think if you did it to someone like Donnarumma, maybe, who I think is about 6'6", I think he'd probably cope a bit better. But Pickford generally has, the frame of a standard centre half. Really, he's not really particularly imposing, is he? So it can cause issues. Liverpool have done that in the past. Specifically Barcelona actually at home when I think we won 4-0. I recall Liverpool doing that, basically putting Van Dijk on top of Ter Stegen and things like that, and it can just result in panic. It can result in a keeper getting poorly sighted and things like that. So thankfully England didn't get punished from it, and England have profited from those little set piece quirks throughout this tournament and specifically the World Cup as well. So it's the kind of thing that, again, going back to the whole tournament football thing, it can just give you, to win a tournament, you have to win. How many games? It's 7 games. You have to win 7 games.
I think it's 7, yeah.
So, if you've got to win 7 games to win a tournament, set pieces can win you 2 of those comfortably, given the whole low scoring nature of football. So I think we'll move on anyway to Italy. But yeah, I think that general performance against Denmark bodes really well going into the final. Obviously, both sides, when it comes to Italy and England, played extra time. So you could argue there's going to be tired legs. But when it comes to Italy, Dave, you feeling confident? You feeling threatened? Worried? What's the general feeling?
So when you've had these various conversations with people over the last couple of weeks, talking about how it's panning out the route to the final and who you'd want to avoid. Italy were right up there, and when it was between them and Spain, they're the team wanted to avoid, because it really goes back to the conversation we had last week, where we were trying to break down Southgate as a manager, and I said that whilst I appreciate he is a good tactician, you have to be a manager at that level, and no doubt about it. I think what he's done is created a really good squad environment, and that's been crucial to the success of this England side. If you see what they've done under him, I think that's down up to a lot of the kind of man management aspect he's had there. I think if you look at Italy, it's the same. I think Mancini's been really good in what he's done there. I mean, people forget, this is the same Italy side who failed to qualify for the World Cup. They kind of been in disarray. Mancini's come in and he just completely changed. I think they've got this, kind of outstanding work ethic, and they've got this confidence, belief. They've got good leaders in the team. All the kind of psychological aspects of the game that's so important, I think they've got in abundance. Then you throw in the fact they've got quite a few good individuals as well. Really strong defensive unit, good strong defenders, but also serious players in attack as well. Chiesa, Signe, they've got plenty up there, haven't they? Players that can cause you issues, and I think it'll be a tough game.
Yeah, one thing about what Mancini's done, and a few top coaches out there tend to do it, and whenever they do, I usually really like it. I don't know why. It's a fairly simple move, but I love the way he's just came in and brought Chiellini and Bonucci back into the fold. If you look at maybe what Hansi Flick did when he took over Bayern Munich from Niko Kovac, he just brought Thomas Muller back into the scene. If you look at what maybe Thomas Tuchel did at Chelsea, he straight away he started Azpilicueta, started Jorginho and plays like this, big characters and stuff. And obviously there's no real way of determining the impact of those players, but there's something about a manager taking charge of a new regime, starting afresh, and just starting the players who many have maybe started to consider are over the hill, are past it, they've had their time sort of thing, and you just kind of give them a new lease of life by saying, listen, you're really important to what we're going to be doing moving forward. And these players, although they might technically be past it, because they've contributed so much over the course of the careers, they are massive, and it's really interesting that Italy's whole setup really is founded upon the defensive experience, stability, assurance, whatever you want to call it, of Chiellini and Bonucci at the back. To the extent that I think they've conceded like one goal in the past 30 hours. Oh no, it's 2 now, isn't it? About 2 goals in the past 30 hours of football or something. And one of those goals, I think it was against, was it Austria? It was a header from a set piece from a corner. And the header, I don't know how he managed to score the header. It only squeezed in. But if you look at Italy's whole setup, I just wanted to focus on how I really like that he's kind of reintegrated the players who are just massive players for the country, but have maybe seen a bit less action over the years.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And as you were talking, I was just double checking it because I thought it's more than likely going to be the case. And talk about reintegrating those players. Italy have got in the tournament so far the oldest average age of any side. Now, obviously, these are always difficult. These stats aren't they, because some teams have played, 6 games, some only played 3 or whatever. But Italy got the oldest average age. Who's got the youngest?
It's got to be England, hasn't
it? England, yeah. So it's 2 polar opposites, which I think is a really interesting narrative.
I actually thought Belgium might have been the oldest, actually, because I've said a few times on the pod.
They're right there, 30. So average age for England 30.8, and Belgium 31. So it's really tight. Those appearances for like Defoe and stuff, Saka brought it right down. Just give us the edge there. But yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think there's more of an appreciation within those players as well when they come back into the fold. And yeah, I know we talk so much about the analytical aspects of football because that's what we do. That's what the show is about. But I just think the difference where what maybe we have compared to others who talk about that side of the game is they don't seem to always value the psychological aspects. And I just think you only have to watch an Italy game to realise how integral it is. Like, I thought Chiellini in terms of the build up to the coin toss for the penalty shootout with Alba.
I had a feeling you was going to say that.
Yeah, for me, I think people initially thought he was just this kind of big jokey character, but for me, I just thought that was mind games at its finest. Just really kind of the punching him in the face and the kind of shaking him, and it's kind of like Big Brother behavior, isn't it? To tap on the head stuff, and I just think all of that just really plays into it. And then, whilst I think they exaggerate it a little bit, and they go to the extreme, I think when they defend set pieces and tackle plays for corners and they're all fist pumping and jumping about. I just think that, although exaggerated, as I said, I do think it just feeds into their own narrative that they're building of this kind of team spirit and this gladiator approach, I guess.
I agree. I think one of the ways of putting it, you could probably say, is they kind of know how to win, which is a difficult thing to describe what you mean by that, really. But just even little things like when they had a lead against Spain, the gamesmanship they were showing. It's not nice to watch, is it? At the end of the day, but it's had a proven way of working over the years when it comes to, especially in tournaments and stuff. Even when it comes to certain players being persistently on at the referee, it just gradually, if you get 1 or 2 decisions in your favour, it can wear down a refereeing figure and stuff. So, yeah, I think if Italy have definitely got, I think Klopp earlier in the season, taking it back to Liverpool, when we were, in fact, it might have been the season before, when we faced Atletico Madrid and we went out, and it was the last game at Anfield with fans in. Klopp was describing Atletico Madrid around that game as a results machine, and I think he was kind of referencing things like that, because I think on the performance side, Atletico Madrid were never really a dominant side, but in terms of securing results, any means necessary, really, they just know what to do almost. And I think Italy are definitely there. Italy have got more, certainly international experience at these top tournaments. I think England have got a fair amount of experience now when it comes to big games because of the players in the squad. You know, Mason Mount just played the Champions League final. Harry Kane's played big games. Kyle Walker's won all kinds. So England have got plenty of experience themselves. But when it comes to specifically the game state in this game, going back to Southgate and stuff and Italy's gamesmanship and all that, the game state's going to be huge. And I think, but you know, neither team will want to concede first. Basically, it goes without saying, really. But it's probably going to be a big deal in this one.
Yeah, especially this game, that it's huge, isn't it? Because both teams have the capacity to win 1-0, you know, score that goal and just see the game out. You know, you're looking at the two best defences so far in terms of, and when I say defence, I don't just mean the back four and the keeper. I just mean the structure. You know, how they keep the opposition out of their goal. You're looking at the two best sides in Europe. You know, maybe even the world. I mean, I don't watch a lot of other nations. I've watched a bit of Copa America, but you know, it won't be far off saying right now both these teams are right up there in terms of keeping the opposition out. And it could be a nightmare to be having to chase a game. So that could be decisive in terms of who scores first. Decisive.
So just a little bit on the specifics of Italy then. Because I think Southgate seems, I think Mancini has kind of gone about the tournament a bit differently to Southgate. The way we've kind of praised Southgate for being very open to the concept of tournament football, game state, managing from match to match, which generally we wouldn't really favour in a club 38 game league perspective, but in the tournament we think is fine. I think Italy have generally gone down the club type route. I think match to match, Mancini clearly, in my opinion, has a fixed system that he's quite clearly worked on and selected players to execute when it comes to constructing a squad. So they kind of have a lopsided 4-2-3-1, really, that rotates once they kind of advance up the field. So they've got the general back four, Chiellini and Bonucci as the two centre-backs, and obviously the left-back throughout the tournament was Spinazzola, who was probably one of the players of the tournament, to be honest. And, you know, as Italy moved up the field, he very much became what looks like a winger, really. And he very much helped Insigne on that side, who's very inclined to cut inside, so Spinazzola's overlaps and underlaps was creating space for him. So once Spinazzola moved forward and advanced into the final third, Italy's right back would kind of tuck inside and would almost form a bit of a situational back three, which again we've seen Liverpool do at times. But it seems to be how Italy have played in every game, regardless of kind of who they've been facing. And even when Spinazzola got injured, they replaced him with Chelsea's Emerson, who's very similar in type. I think he's a fullback, but very attacking by nature. So I think it's different to what England have been doing. Obviously, England have adapted at times to use a back three when situations were right, because Germany have been using it and stuff. I think England used a 4-3-3 at one point early in this tournament. So two different approaches there, and I think from England's perspective, Southgate should be able to look at Italy and clearly analyse what to expect. Whereas when Italy look at England seems to have more of an approach whereby we will change based on you. And, you know, depends whatever you favour there. But looking at that for a one-off game in a final, I think England might have a bit of an edge there.
Yeah, I agree, because it's a lot easier to prepare for, isn't it? Whereas Italy, as you say, don't fully know what is going to happen with England, because even as you said, if there's personnel changes within that Italy setup, the profiles are the same, and it's clear that Mancini wants to replace like for like. So if a player, if one player comes in, the other one goes out, it's to perform the same role. So the structure is still the same. If you look at England, it isn't like that. You know, Kyle Walker, say if you're playing a flat back four, Kyle Walker's role won't be the same as Kieran Trippier's if you play like a 3-4-3, will it? It'll vary. So it's going to be very difficult to predict what England will do. And it does. I think specifically, club football week to week, you probably be better off the way Italy are doing it. I think having that kind of structure, almost rehearsing your style week in, week out, fine tuning it, etc. But as you said, a one-off game, that could be the difference. If England start well, Italy spending the first 20 minutes trying to suss out what they're trying to do, what movement to lead to which, how they're attacking, etc., etc. And England score within that time. Well, a couple of minutes ago, we just talked about the importance of the first goal. So it could be huge. So I agree. I think having that flexibility could be decisive on Sunday.
Yeah, I think, given that England will be able to pretty much forecast exactly what Italy are going to do, unless Mancini makes a very late change for the final, which I think would be quite a big call for him to make, considering he's clearly worked on this system. So just drop it for the final. Okay, you then factor in the elements of surprise, which should benefit Italy, I'm sure. But then, if that goes wrong, you have serious regrets, I think, because you'd be thinking to yourself, I chucked out the system that got us to the final for the sake of the elements of surprise and end up going wrong and all that. So I think England will definitely benefit from being able to look at Italy and knowing what to expect in a tactical sense. And even if you look at the players, I think it's interesting looking at Italy, because I think specifically if you look at where they're weak, I know we've just been praising them when it comes to Chiellini and Bonucci, but they're not very quick. They're not fast players, them. And I think specifically when it comes to Italy's game against Belgium, I thought that might have been where the game was going to be lost, because there was one or two moments where De Bruyne and Lukaku were just running directly at Bonucci and Chiellini, who seemed a little bit exposed, I thought. So whether England's speed will cause problems for Italy, specifically Sterling, who's had a great tournament, it'll be interesting, that one. But it's going to be an interesting one to preview. I can't really see. I'm not sure who dominates possession, because I was quite surprised Italy dominated possession against Belgium. But then when it comes to Spain had all of the ball. So I'm not sure if Italy wanted Spain to have all of the ball or whatever. In the England game against Germany, I expected England to sit off and Germany to have all of the ball. It wasn't really the case. I thought England were quite front foot. So I think in terms of how the match will play out, certainly at the start when it's 0-0 and stuff, I think it's quite difficult to predict who is going to be the more proactive, dominant side, and which team is going to be more keen to counter-attack almost.
I'll be honest, my personal opinion is that I fully expect Italy to sit in and kind of retreat, remain compact, and let England try and break them down. I just think it'll go along with that kind of mentality that they're probably going to adopt on the day. They're going to be in Wembley. They're going to be massively outnumbered. It's going to be like an away game, really, in a big final, big occasion. As you said, against Spain, I mean, the numbers will vary from wherever you look at, but I'm looking now and they had under 31% possession by the end of the game. So that's not a lot at all, really. And yeah, I can fully foresee, and for the reason you just said, England's got a lot of pace up top, and I don't think they'd want to risk find themselves in kind of 1v1 situations where one of England's wide attackers kind of comes in and they're running at a slow, not very mobile defence. I think Mancini's going to prefer to give a bit more protection to the defence and then try and expose England on the counter if he can.
It's going to be interesting, and given that we've just mentioned game state quite a lot, and the importance of whoever scores first and stuff. It's going to be interesting if it goes to penalties. We can't not mention it. England haven't yet had to play with penalties. Italy just have against Spain and went through. But it's kind of a flip of a coin, really. Although it does depend how much due diligence, essentially, that you do behind the scenes. Like I suppose to guard against the elements of chance. We know that according to expected goals, 76% of penalties on roughly are scored. Whether that's the case in shootouts, I'd be interested to know, actually. And we also know that the team that shoots first in a penalty shootout usually wins 60% of the time. So I suppose that initial coin flip is a big deal. And I had a little look at the numbers before, Dave, regarding the two keepers. I don't think it doesn't cover the whole careers, it just covers league. So Serie A and Premier League. When it comes to Donnarumma, he's saved 1 in every 3 pens in Serie A since his emergence over the past few seasons. Pickford, 1 in every 4 pens. But both of those are pretty decent. I mean, I suppose Pickford, in terms of 1 in every 4, I suppose that's roughly on point with the penalties are scored 76% of the time thing. But I've seen Pickford deal with penalties, and he does look generally, I'd say, better than average. And Donnarumma's record there seems to be better than average. So if it did go to penalties, it could be a case of quite a few saves in there.
Yeah, it's I think the psychological aspect that comes in from the shootouts definitely will have an impact on that as well. Yeah, it's tough that. I mean, I did see our producer. Go on, sorry. Just
go
quickly,
on,
our producer.
You say, yeah.
Yeah, no team has ever won 2 penalty shootouts in one Euros tournament, which I think is a good sign. If it does go there.
I think that's interesting as well from the perspective of, we talk a lot about analysis and stuff. Obviously, England would have now seen Italy take a few pens, and a few of the players take a few pens, which side they went, how Donnarumma behaved. So England would have, again, that kind of edge when it comes to pre-match analysis compared to Italy, who have seen Kane take a penalty and nobody else. So it's going to be an interesting one. If it does go to that point, God help us all. I don't think I want it to go that way. Like, to be honest, it's a cruel way of winning, cruel way of losing. I'd rather it be done in normal time. But yeah, I mean, we had to talk about penalties, Dave. It's international tournaments and it's England.
Yeah, I really don't want that. Yeah, it's nice if you come out on top, but no, I'd like to see it done in 90 minutes if possible, with the result going England's way. But to see, it's exciting though.
It is. So aside from the match, then, just to round up, we're gonna do basics. So first, Dave, I'm gonna ask for your team. What would your team be for this game, and your formation?
Yeah. Okay. So what I'd do is I would go. Oh yeah, this is not. Okay, I'll go 4-2-3-1.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough, mate. 4-2-3-1. Same for now. I go same keeper, obviously. Same defense. Sterling on the left. I'd maybe go Sancho on the right for this one, just to try and disrupt things a little bit. He's got with his dribbling ability, and if those opportunities come where he can run at teams or there is some space to exploit, I think he'd do that well. I'll keep Mason Mount in the 10. I didn't think he was phenomenal, to be honest, against Denmark, but I still think he's a great player. But one big one that I feel would be controversial away from this podcast, but maybe not talking on this podcast, I'd bring Henderson in for Declan Rice.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know whether Southgate would do that at this stage going into a final, but I just think if you think of 4-2-3-1, if you envisage Italy sitting in more, being a little bit more compact, you're going to need a little bit more penetration from deep. I don't think Rice is that based in doing that. He doesn't have to do it week in, week out at West Ham, who are predominantly defend first type of tactics. Henderson does this all the time for Liverpool. You know, he has to be that player who breaks things down and offers a bit of penetration. I thought he looked really sharp when he come on against Denmark, doing some good stuff, making good angles, good overlapping runs, and I just think for me he comes in.
So for me, I would also go 4-2-3-1, and I would actually. It's tricky actually when you think about it, but I think I would go the same team. I think I'd keep everything the same. My biggest temptation would be to include Henderson, as you say, not because I'm a Liverpool fan, but simply because of how massive the game is. I know Phillips has played well and stuff, and Rice has played well, but Henderson has done this. Henderson's experienced it. Henderson's played Champions League finals, more than one. He's played in England's last semi-final, I think, in the World Cup against Croatia when we lost. He's won Premier Leagues. And I think, you know, in matches like this, you just never know how certain players are going to react to the occasion, basically. And I don't really doubt that Phillips and Rice will just not turn up or something like that. But I just think when it comes to his presence, his leadership and all that, so all those intangibles alongside the fact he can move the ball forward and things, and I think he's got a bit more of an attacking threat than the pair of them. I do think you'd have to consider Henderson, to be honest. I'm not even sure who it would be for, if it would be for Rice or Phillips, because it'd be a really hard call considering they've got the team, they've contributed to getting to the team to the final, so that'd be a big call, that one. But in terms of everything else, I would keep everything else the same. Because I think, you know, we've touched on Italy's relatively slow centre-back pairing. So I'd keep Sterling, and I think I'm pretty sure I'd keep Saka, because he's left-footed, cutting inside, going towards the likes of Bonucci and Chiellini, and he's quick and can carry the ball and stuff. And I think on that side, that's where Emerson plays. And Emerson, as we've touched on, will be an attacking outlet for Italy. And Saka's obviously got experience playing as a wing-back and stuff, playing as a full-back and things. I think he's maybe a bit better defensively than Sancho. And Grealish, and I think in terms of Grealish, obviously there's lots of clamour to play Grealish, but I wouldn't start Grealish. I think Sterling has to play, and he has to play in his usual slot. And in my opinion, that's where Grealish would play. And then it's either Grealish and Mount for the number 10 spot. And I think I'd go with Mount in this game. Just, again, off the ball, I think he's better in terms of defensive work and stuff. And I think I'd just use Grealish again as that key to the door if we need him. I think he's perfect for that. So that's kind of how I'd do it. But, you know, Rashford, I think, is an option for this one, where Saka's playing. But I do think Rashford plays a little bit worse when he's on that right side. I think he prefers where Sterling's playing, basically. But it's a tough one, actually. It'd be interesting to see what he goes with, but I don't think he'll change much at all. And then around this, Dave, your player of the tournament?
Yeah, look, might seem lazy, but it's the truth. I think for me, Raheem Sterling, definitely. You know, I think there's a few different players we could talk about, but beyond his goal contributions, he's just played really well. You know, he's played really well in a team that's got all the way to the final, irrespective of what happens at that final. He's been, you know, really, really difficult to defend against. Even yesterday doesn't score, but big hand in both goals. You know, he would have scored the first had it weren't put in as it wasn't scored an own goal and then creates the penalty. I just think he's been fantastic, Josh. So he's mine.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Sterling's been outstanding, to be honest. I think he's been so difficult to defend against. He's just so quick. He's lightning quick. I don't just mean running in behind. I mean just his actions on the ball. Sometimes he'll have taken 3 or 4 touches before his opponent even realizes he's moved. Like his touches are so rapid that he's just incredibly difficult to defend against. And because of what he's like, he's generally a problem in penalty boxes, can win penalties and stuff like that, which is again massive in these low scoring tournament games we obviously saw that last night, rightly or wrongly. So yeah, I think he's scored most of England's goal. I think he scored 3 of England's goals, is it? Something like that, maybe 4.
Yeah.
And I think virtually all of the goals he's played a key part in. You know, the opening goal against Ukraine, he assisted. The opening goal against Denmark yesterday, he would have put in the net if Simon Kjær didn't score an own goal. So, and he played the full 120 minutes and was still darting around after 2 hours. So, I think he's been outstanding. He's been at a brilliant tournament. So, when it comes to your alternative player of the tournament, Dave, so bit of a, this is your opportunity to be a hipster. This is your opportunity to give us a bit of a wild card alternative shout to be going with.
Yeah, I can't miss this open goal for me here. Look, there's a few names could have said Pinzola. Danny Olmo, I think's really stepped up. Another player that we talked about in the past. He's looked good for Spain, but obviously, Josh, I'm going to say Damsgaard. Talked him up pre-tournament, and I think he's played really well when he's come into the side. Beyond scoring, I think he scored 2 goals, one of which was that beauty against England. But you probably agree, Josh. He's just looked really sharp, hasn't he? Really good technical player, working well in between the lines, and a big problem for defences. So he's definitely one I'm pleased to have seen done well after we spoke about him.
Yeah, sticking with that theme, have you got any any idea who I'm going to pick by any chance?
Go on, yeah. Why not?
Well,
no way. Why would
exactly? Yeah, exactly. No, yeah. I've got an open goal myself, I think. So in terms of Joachim Mail, Denmark's left wing back throughout the tournament, who I flagged before the tournament as a right back because that's where he usually plays at least. But I think him being right-footed has actually had a really interesting impact on his left wing back role. He's obviously scored a few, been really, really good for Denmark going forward, a bit like Spinazzola in terms of offering an attacking outlet. And yeah, I'm happy that I flagged him before the tournament as a player to watch because I was aware of him beforehand. He was I think it was Genk or Ghent. I get confused with the two of them sometimes. I think it was Genk though. Then he moved to Atlanta in January for about 10 million. And I've been aware of him as a well-rounded, solid fullback. I know he had a tough night last night, but who hasn't against Raheem Sterling in the past couple of weeks? But I think specifically going forward, he's been a wild card.
Yeah, on that as well, someone did point out that carrying a little bit of a knock, 3rd game into extra time, and I thought it was a really good point. He did struggle last night, but I don't think you're right to play it off on that alone, do you? He has been really good this tournament.
Yeah, so another success there for the Analysing Anfield tips. But yeah, we'll round up there anyway. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah, and enjoy the final. Hopefully, England bring it home. We haven't actually said throughout the whole tournament that it's coming on once, Dave, but
I'll leave that to you.
To be honest, I think it might. That's all I'm going to say. So yeah, tune in. Maybe next week or the week after. I might be away next week, but thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.